Hi, everybody, and welcome to the msuwma podcast. This is Justin Jackson. Today's guest is Dr. Barry Mulholland. He's the director of the financial planning program at the University of Akron. This is the second time I've had the pleasure to speak with Dr. Mulholland, and both times have been incredibly valuable to me personally. He is a wealth of knowledge and is incredibly generous in sharing what he knows with people who want to learn. He's an educator in the truest sense, and I think you all will enjoy the show. Yeah, well, first of all, I'd like to say I'm glad to see you again.
Oh, good to see you too.
Conversation. That was like getting close to a year ago now, which to me feels like yesterday. I don't know if you've done a lot more things than I have during the pandemic, but it's felt like yesterday to me.
Yeah, this has been one of those years where you look back, and I've been teaching for a long time, and certainly I've never had an experience like this. The transition to teaching online from all of my courses were live in-person courses to fully online, and trying hybrid approach, trying, having half the class sitting in front of me while half the class was live streaming. It's been a unique experience. Let me put it that way.
Yeah. How are you adapting to teaching? I know some professors are doing well, especially the ones that taught large lecture. Like when you're speaking to 400 people, it's not that much different than speaking to a Zoom, I think. But like
right.
more and like when I talk to the professors who teach 20-person classes, 30-person classes, they got a lot out of that interaction.
Yeah, and I'm an extrovert, so to me, the in-person is always the best way to go.
Yeah.
It's been interesting. At times, I find that some of the students that maybe wouldn't have talked, I can try to get them to talk a little bit. I will say, because you're going to have students watching this, as much as the students like the anonymity of turning their cameras off, you really make it hard for the professors to get a sense of where you're at. We read faces, we read the interaction, we'll pull people in that look like they have something to say, but maybe they're a little bit shy and don't want to say it. You turn your camera off, I'm talking to a wall. I don't know if you're there or not.
Yeah.
I personally don't like, singling people out and, trying the embarrassing role to get them to participate. I would rather that they just step in and participate. So I've added that if you talk, you have to turn your camera on. But I still have students that will not turn their camera on, will not talk. They only want to message through chat. And then I have to read their chat to everybody in the class. It's just kind of hilarious. So if you want to do your professors a favor, you want to get noticed, turn your camera on. It's that simple. But it's, the students have been, I will say, the students have been tremendous, and they've adapted well, probably better than some of us older faculty. I'm great with technology, and I'm struggling with some of it, but it's been an experience. I will say, if I'm going to teach a course, I'd rather teach all online, like we're doing now. We use Microsoft Teams at University of Akron, but I would rather do it there or do it fully in the classroom. And that's what I did this semester. Last semester, I had split classes where I had some live in the classroom while I was live streaming. And that is just really tough to do. Yeah. And so I pulled back from that.
It's almost like it's a whole new art form, a whole new style of educating.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much give and take. And I think even as a student, it's kind of nice to look around the room and be like, does everyone else look confused? Because I'm kind of confused. And you can gauge that. And you're like, am I going to be the only idiot that's speaking to all these black boxes? But I don't know. It's just such a different experience sitting in a Zoom class as opposed to, being in a class where you can look around at your classmates and kind of gauge the room. I don't know.
Yeah. I found that one of the things I've learned is that the pregnant pause, if you like that term, I love that term, the pregnant pause. If nobody speaks, if I ask a question and nobody speaks, I wait a really long time.
Yeah.
Where in the classroom, people will get a little nervous and speak up. I wait a really long time until somebody will finally say something. And that's becoming an effective tool. So if you want to get over the pain, somebody speak quicker. That's my goal with all of the students.
No, that's a good move. So do you mind sharing a little bit about, what your role is and what your job is today?
Mm-hmm. I'm a a professor of practice. I actually chose a non-tenure role. And we can talk about kind of the roles that faculty play. So I'm not in the tenure track because while I do research, I'm not doing a lot of research right now. My focus is on program development, program building. So I'm the program director for the financial planning program at the University of Akron. I've been here now just finishing my 5th year as the program director, and I'm an assistant professor of practice, just a rank that we carry. And the professors of practice are kind of the new title that the AACSB, that accredits business schools, has kind of picked up and approved. So there's those of us that come in and bring practical experience or focus on maybe external things that we may go the professor of practice route, where somebody who carries the title of professor, if they're not of practice, then they're an academic professor, and their focus is on teaching and research. So I've got the 2 titles. One is my official university associate or assistant professor of practice. My working title is I'm the director of the program. In the director's role, then I not only teach, but I also oversee community relations and program development. So I do all the external networking and work with our development folks to raise funds, work with our business community to help our students find career opportunities, develop networking opportunities, liaison role to the professional organizations. So I monthly attend multiple meetings between the Financial Planning Association and the Society of Financial Service Professionals. I work with the folks at NAPFA. So it's just a very busy role trying to kind of look at how do we grow the program. So we've had some good success. We've bounced around. We were up almost doubled prior to the pandemic from where we were 5 years ago. So we're being pretty successful and really looking to the future to continue to grow our program. We've been around since 1998, so we're actually one of the older programs. But until recently, we were a fairly small and fairly unknown program. But our students have done a tremendous job in getting noticed nationally in competitions over the past 5-6 years. And then, of course, we have our Diversitas program that we'll talk about a little bit later.
So what do you think is your personality type, or I guess like professional type to be a program director? Like, you need to be more of like an entrepreneurial minded person, almost like the CEO of a program, as opposed to a hard researcher who's got their head in the clouds.
It really depends on the structure that you're in. Entrepreneurial spirit is kind of a good way to talk about that.
Yeah.
You've got to be willing to try things. As a really good dear friend of mine says to me too often, have you failed enough to earn the right to succeed? So have you learned the lessons of failure that make it possible for you to succeed? And so I think that's part of being a program director, is one, being willing to try things, being willing to push things, with these ideas, to work closely to say, hey, we should try that, and maybe that will work. And if it doesn't, okay, we step back, we find another avenue. So I think certainly entrepreneurial. I think optimist plays well into that.
Yeah.
We tend to see like, hey, we can get there. We'll work on this. So I think that does. It's certainly my personality is extrovert, as I've said. And I think that's really important here too. Not that you can't be successful in this role. And I think there's some very successful ones that they're not as outgoing as maybe I am. But I think that helps. You've got to be willing to meet people where they're at. You've got to be willing to talk about your program and be able to paint those pictures. But it's a great opportunity. I mean, I would encourage, if any of the students watching want to pursue academia, it's fun. We have a great opportunity, and it's a great lifestyle.
Do you feel like there's a need for this in this field right now?
Oh yeah, there's a huge demand. I did my PhD. I actually entered the education side. I was a practitioner, in fact, I didn't even start in financial planning or finance. I don't have a business undergrad degree. I have an engineering undergrad degree, and so it was just through a series of events that one of them was that I was in an engineering sales role, and didn't understand the finances. I was talking to economic buyers, trying to sell them on our services and products, and couldn't speak their language. So realized I needed to get some business background, went back and got an MBA while I was involved in sales. And then through that met professors in a college of business. They in turn knew that I was transitioning in jobs and invited me to come and teach, which no one had ever invited me to teach before. That wasn't encouraged in my family of origin. And so tried it and went, wow, this is fun. I love it. Not enough to pursue it as a full-time career. I actually went and started a couple of businesses. So that's the entrepreneurial side of me. So a human resources business. We had a professional recruiting business with a person I had worked for as a recruiter in sales, and then ended up creating a new style of recruiting business. Successful business, not successful partnership. So it just happened that I had a family, my parents' financial planner had contacted me, as all good financial planners, they're prospecting. He was going for the next generation, and got me as a client. And it was in my transition out of my first business that he approached me and said, you should come try our business. And I said, no, I don't want to sell insurance. And he said, no, you should really come and try this. And that's how I ended up in financial planning. But because of the relationships I had built with the faculty during my MBA program, because of my business connections, having run a business, my financial planning business was very good. But the college that I was at the time was very interested in possibly creating a personal finance course, and maybe eventually a track in financial planning in their business school. And so they invited me to come back and become a professor, kind of be the pre-professor of practice route. And with an MBA, the general rule is that you have to have 1 degree above the level at which you teach. And so with an MBA, I was able to teach undergraduate students. If I wanted to teach graduate students beyond basic knowledge, then I needed the PhD. So that's kind of the route I came. So I was what we refer to as a career changer in this industry, and still an important part of growing the financial planning industry is while we have a lot of financial planning programs and they're growing, right now there's not enough student output to fill all of the opportunities. So we'll still see career changers.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting that you were an engineering undergrad who did sales, which kind of makes sense that the intangibles were there to be a planner, right? It's like the total combination of like being able to understand quantitative, technical things, but also, kind of being a people person. That's really interesting.
Yeah, I always kidded I was an engineer who could talk to people, which the former engineering students that are listening to this will laugh and get a kick out of that because they're in the same boat. Yeah, I describe financial planning as actually financial engineering. We're as engineers, we're taught to think in processes, to work in processes, to think about risk, and to build risk management into designs. And so we're very process oriented in our education, and it's about building. I mean, I was a mechanical engineer. I love mechanical things. To this day, those are my go-to fun projects on the weekend is, construction projects or automobile projects or things like that. And so what was interesting when I was after I finished my PhD and I was on the faculty at Texas Tech, a quarter of the faculty at the time all had engineering undergraduate degrees. So engineers, those students that had the engineering path and make the decision that maybe that isn't what they thought it was, this is a great transition field to swing to. We saw that at Texas Tech. We saw a lot of engineering students switch. We're seeing that at the University of Akron, that we're seeing students come in from engineering. So if you know an engineering student who's not sure what to do, share this podcast with them.
Yeah, I do have a lot of friends who are engineers, and to me, it's just it's interesting because they're interesting people in the way that they think. Like I would love having friends that are engineers just to have a conversation to hear how their minds work. Because I have a very creative mind. Like my mind kind of works in abstractions, and I feel like their minds work in processes. So I love having friends that are engineers because it always like it just challenges the way that I approach things.
Yes. I will tell you, engineers as clients are some of the hardest ones to work with because they're, as I like to say, they're anal retentive, and I'm one of them. They want to know all the details. They want to understand the process that you're using. But if you're comfortable talking with those kind of folks, it like you said, it can be a lot of fun. In order, to kind of deal with folks like that. I had a number of engineers that were clients when I was an advisor.
Yeah, I mean, I can see how they could be tough clients, but then if you really understand, the way that their brain works, I don't feel like engineers try to be tough. I just feel like they want to really understand how things work. I don't know, like they want to know the why, how, and if you really explain that, then it's fine.
Yes. Yep. Yeah, I think that my parents kind of thought I would be an engineer when I started taking things apart as a kid, just to see how they worked. The challenge was putting them back together. And sometimes I could, sometimes I couldn't. But you learned and did better the next time.
So if a student thinks that they want to pursue a career as a CFP program professor or just get involved in academia in general, what do you think, what do they need to do to get that ball in motion, so to say? Like, what do they need?
I think there's a couple of things to understand. Again, kind of back to my comment. If you want to try teaching first, do that. With an undergraduate degree, if you want to just see what does it feel like to go teach a course, we're all trained in math. We're all trained in Excel, and you're used to using technology. Go to one of the community colleges and see if they're looking for somebody to teach part-time. Maybe it's a math course or maybe it's a technology course. See once what your interests are, but go try the classroom. If you have fun doing that. And again, teaching is a process. We create, curriculums, and it's a process. This is where I want to get the students to. So I've got this process of trying to get them through that process. So try to do that. The other thing to realize is that if you want to come in and teach as an adjunct, we've got several folks teaching for us. All of them have CFPs that teach in our program. They all also have master's degrees. So if you want to teach at the undergraduate level, the rule of thumb is 1 degree above it. So you would need to look to pursue at least a master's degree to come in either as a professor of practice or as what we would refer to as an adjunct or a lecturer, somebody who teaches part-time.
So are you saying like a master's in business or?
A master's in business is fantastic. There are masters in financial services that are available through like the College for Financial Planning or the American College. So there's some online programs. You could do look at the online master's program, fantastic program at Kansas State University. They've got a tremendous program. But yeah, otherwise an MBA works. If you can do an MBA in finance or for a master's, of finance, we're seeing on the master's level in business schools that a lot of universities are targeting master's degrees to a specific area. So I'm not sure if Michigan State is doing that at this point in time, but if you're accounting, you could do, we have a highly ranked master's in tax program. And so to have a financial planning undergraduate degree and get a master's in tax, I mean, not only is that incredibly powerful for business, for your career purposes, but that would be a tremendous background to bring in as an adjunct. So that would be kind of the next step is look at what you like to do, but a master's degree, usually it's in the area that you're interested, but even a general MBA, and that's what opened the door for me to be able to teach undergraduates.
So do you recommend students pursue some time in the field before they get started in teaching? Like, do you recommend that you spend a couple of years before you even consider getting out in front of people?
I think it's worth doing. I really do. I think One of the things, especially if you're thinking that if you want to make a career of teaching, then I would recommend seek out one of the PhD programs.
Yeah.
And there's 4 great programs that exist out there. Certainly, I did mine through Texas Tech, and I went back at an advanced age. I only completed my or started my PhD 12 years ago. I completed it about 7 years ago, and I did mine at Texas Tech. I left my job. I taught at one of the universities in Wisconsin, was where I was building a program, and I left there for a couple of years to go to Texas Tech and ended up staying. Partly the program I was at decided they didn't want to keep pursuing what we were doing. The other part of it was just an incredible experience. So Texas Tech has, I believe, the biggest PhD program in the country, just an incredible PhD program and experience. Kansas State has a tremendous program. They actually you can do theirs remotely, their PhD. So there are people that work as advisors while they're pursuing their PhD. That's a great option. Where Texas Tech, it's a resident program. You'd have to move to Lubbock, Texas. It's out in the middle of nowhere, but you get focused. It's an incredible experience. University of Georgia has a tremendous program also. And so I would certainly consider that. There's also a program at University of Missouri. And so they would also be a program. I would look at all of them and see which fits your personality and style, and also look at the research that they're doing. Because if you're going to pursue a PhD, you're going to need to do research. You can't complete your PhD without doing a dissertation, which is research. And so think about what you're interested in. My experience was I worked in insurance. So my PhD was very much insurance behavior focused, about why, whether a tool that insurance advisors uses that they use for their industry and for their job is a useful tool or not. No one had ever looked at that. So it's finding things along those lines that are interesting, and you've got to be interested in doing the research piece of it.
So this will probably show that I have an interest in research. But what did you find with the insurance? We're talking about, is this a relevant piece of?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, we looked at life insurance illustrations. Okay. And we did a national survey of advisors to get their opinions on whether they thought life insurance illustrations were useful. And we found that fully a third of them thought they were completely useless. We found that half of them said, yeah, they're useful. We found also that there were some that said, yeah, they're very useful. The one question we didn't ask was, what was their main product that they sold? Because when I shared my research and the folks at the Society of Financial Service Professionals were very interested in what we were doing, and they were helpful in getting the survey out. But the one question we didn't think to ask is, what's your main product? So that we could see if maybe there was a product relationship between those who liked illustrations and those who didn't. But to be able to quantify that, more than a third of advisors were using this tool daily by law, they had to show illustrations, actually found that they weren't a useful tool in helping people understand what they were doing.
Did you touch down on any level with, if commissions and commissioned insurance products should be sold or not? Is that something that you're interested in at all?
I'm certainly interested in looking at that. I think I've always viewed, even when I was selling insurance, and I worked for an insurance-based financial firm. I always saw that as a tool in the toolbox. Yeah. And I think a lot of people either you've always got a spectrum. You've got people who think that it shouldn't even be in the toolbox, and you've got people who think it's the first tool. In fact, I always like to kid that those are the people who say, okay, insurance is the answer. Now, what's your question? And they'll make it fit. And there's the other people who are like, that's the worst thing in the world, run away from it. And I just know that the tool is depending on the situation. It's a useful tool, just like a wrench is. You don't use a wrench to take out a Phillips screw. It just doesn't work. And so you've just got to find the right tool for the situation. But you need to know the tools exist.
I feel like it's an interesting, I guess, argument happening in the industry right now, where I feel like I feel like it gets a lot of heat,
Mhm.
um, and I don't know if it really deserves the heat that it gets. I don't know.
Again, I think you have to look at the history. You have to look at the history of financial planning to understand that our industry, as we understand financial planning now, 50 years ago, when the first group got together, it was accountant and insurance folks and investment folks that were part of that first meeting back in December of '69 that said, hey, we're kind of doing some of the same things. They were looking more towards how can we be, serving the client's best interest. But again, you've got folks coming from the investment industry that were focused on sales was the driving force. You've got folks from the insurance industry where sales was the driving force. And so that was a very successful model for 100 years.
Mm-hmm.
And so to move people away from that is difficult. And some research actually shows that depending on the client, some clients are actually better served by a commission approach than they are by an assets under management or a fee approach.
Yeah.
And so again, it's a tool in the toolbox. I think that's why we see the hybrid part of our industry growing so tremendously, is that they're able to kind of better serve the needs of the clients that they have in front of them. When I was fully commission based product sales and did financial planning, I had several clients who were like, I love what you're doing, but I don't want to buy product. Can I pay you a fee? I'd love to pay you for your time. So they weren't opposed to paying me for the knowledge and service I was bringing. They just didn't like that tool. And so as I was transitioning out, the company I was with was actually transitioning to a hybrid model where those clients I could serve them by doing fee. Other clients, hey, they needed somebody to take care of this one issue for them. The easiest way for them to pay was to do it out through a commission on the product.
So it almost seems like people talk about changing the structure, like fee only, fee based, but it almost seems like the emphasis needs to be more on the person wielding the tools. Like, is an ethical person? Because at some point, somebody's going to need affordable term life. Okay, everybody's going to need that at some point. And that doesn't necessarily make you a bad person because you sold a commissioned product. So I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's, there was a group of program directors that inputted into a project, and Dr. Martin Say out of Kansas State, and Dr. Luke Dean out of Utah Valley, and Dr. Nathan Harness out of Texas A&M, Dr. Craig Lemoyne out of Illinois. I had input. There were about a dozen of us that had inputs into a model that kind of Luke Dean, Dr. Dean initially suggested, called the 12 Tribes of Financial Planning. And it allows us and I use it, every semester I teach it in my fundamentals course, and my student organization has me present it. And it talks about, there are at least 12 different segments to our industry. And those segments have different attributes. And the challenge for you as students or anybody, career changers coming into this industry, is finding the best place for you. I like to refer to them as the best on-ramp for you. Yeah. And so, we have entrepreneurial students. They want to build a business that's their personality. Absolutely. I'll send them to the opportunities that are more entrepreneurial. There are others that are, no, I'd rather be part of a team, or I want to build my confidence. Well, hey, there's great RIA jobs where you come in as either a paraplanner or an associate. It's finding that right one. If you've got a sales bent, maybe you want to go serve in the wholesaling side of the business, providing products to the advisors within the business, helping them look at products so they can pick the best tools to provide to their clients. There's a tons of ways. Academics is one of those 12 tribes.
Yeah, and for me personally, I got a job offer at an RIA, fee only RIA, and at the end of the day, I was like, you know what? I want to build my own business. I'm an entrepreneurial guy. I'm a sales guy. I mean, I feel like some of the, I don't know, some of the ways this is being presented is like, this is the right way. Like, this is the right only way to go to the FIO and the RIA. I'm like, I don't know if that's 100% right. Like, I plan on, being ethical and having a fiduciary base, but I am an entrepreneurial person, and that still exists in the industry.
Yeah, I think the CFP board has tried to do to make that clear, is that the compensation model is not as important as people want. People want to equate the commission model with not being fiduciary. Yeah. And I will tell you, working with a lot of commission folks through the years, the vast majority of them were actually fiduciary towards their clients. While they sold them product, they did it in a way that they were truly serving the best interest of their clients. So I think the picture has been painted that it's these two camps. And I think the reality is there's fringes there are fringes that the commission, it's all about the commission rather than about the client. I think as long as you're focused on the client and serving them best, no matter what your model is, I think you can serve them very, very well and do what's in their best interest. So
let's go back to Texas Tech and Lubbock. Okay. What was your experience like there? Like, what was Lubbock like?
Lubbock is incredible. I mean, I had a great time there. We were there for 7 years, and Lubbock is a city of about 250,000 people. Most people have no idea. It's growing. In fact, it wouldn't surprise me if it's approached 300,000 now. It's the largest city of its size. It's the most remote city of its size in the country. Wow. It's the farthest city from any other 250,000 person city in the country. So it is out there. We always refer to it, when you live there, you refer to it as it's 6 hours from anywhere you want to be. But it's actually a unique environment. It's high plains. It's over 3,000 feet of elevation. It's incredibly flat. Prior to the 20th century, that area was referred to as the Texas Desert. But it's a dry climate. It's 300 days of sunshine a year. It's just different if you're coming from the Midwest. We moved there from Wisconsin, so it was a bit of a shock to the system. That being said, incredibly friendly people. The university is incredibly friendly. There's a lot of opportunity because it is remote. It's really focused on itself, but you also get very comfortable with traveling. Hey, we're going to run to Dallas for the weekend. That's a 6-hour drive. No big deal. We'll just run to Dallas for the weekend, or we'll hop on a plane. It's an hour flight. But 4 hours, you can be in the mountains snowboarding. In New Mexico, you can go to Albuquerque, you can go to Santa Fe. You're 8 hours drive from Denver. So there's a lot to do. But the university is just incredible. So if students are thinking, well, gee, would I ever consider going out there? Because it's remote, it's actually got a really incredible feel among the students. The students really connect with each other. They do a lot together. There's a real family feel to that program. So that was my experience. My wife and I actually really enjoyed being there. Probably would have stayed had not this opportunity that aligned with my career path presented itself. And we're Midwesterners. We've got a lot of family back this way. Yeah. That is the one thing, is that it was a 20-hour drive from Wisconsin to get there. Yeah. So it's a ways away. But if students are thinking about it, they've got incredible programs, incredible faculty, incredible students. So I'm biased. And I know your school loves big football. They've got big football and big basketball. Right. So it's great.
Do they have a lot of like the Western culture? I have a friend in Houston, and they wear he wears a suit to work and cowboy boots.
Oh yeah.
Is there some of that?
Yeah, I mean, we were told within the first semester there that we didn't fit in because we didn't have cowboy boots. And so but before the first Christmas, my wife and I, we went home in cowboy boots. You do fall into that culture. There you wear sport coats and dress shirts without ties and jeans and cowboy boots
Nice. Okay.
for a dress up business meeting. So it is different. Yeah, I've got cowboy boots in the closet. But it definitely y'all gets added to your vernacular. I still use y'all slips in when I'm talking to folks. So
Wow.
yeah, it is very much the West. It's the home of Buddy Holly. It's incredible music. If you love music, there's just an incredible music scene there.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Music bars and stuff like that?
Oh yeah, yeah. There's great theaters. There's kind of a district that we would go to, and they had the Cactus Theater and the Firehouse. I think it was called the Firehouse. It was an old fire station that had been turned into a bar, and lots of great local bands and stuff. Some of they've produced country music stars through the years and others. So.
Yeah, I've always wanted to have an excuse to wear cowboy boots. So maybe I have to check it out. So do you mind sharing a little bit or breaking down the difference between the human sciences and the business schools and kind of how they're kind of intersecting, or they're kind of in different places as far as financial planning goes?
Yeah, the history was that business schools didn't see financial planning as a business degree. They saw it as a human science, home economics. Human sciences grew out of the home economics movement. So when Texas Tech started their home economics college back early in their years, it was home sciences. And so it's some are consumer science schools, some are human science, depending on the university and what they choose to do. So, 30 years ago, 25 years ago, when I guess over 30, approaching 35 years ago, when the CFP board first approached universities about including or them starting to teach the coursework for financial planning, most business schools, not all, but most business schools said, no, that doesn't fit in business. It's not traditional corporate finance. That really needs to go to the home economics or the consumer science or human science. So when you'll see some of the oldest programs dating back to the 80s, and there's not many of those left. Baylor University is one of them, certainly Texas Tech. They were in the first class of schools that picked up programs in financial planning. And so that's why you see that. What business schools also realized in the last 20 years, because when I was in Wisconsin, I was at a business school, and we were approached by the CFP board about creating a track or starting a program in a business school. And business schools, especially what we would refer to as maybe the second tier business schools. So they're not producing PhDs, but they're producing good local content. Those schools started to see that there was a real demand. And so those schools started picking up financial planning as a track within their business schools. That's what happened at Akron back in the late 90s, is an entrepreneurial department chair in working with a local business, financial planning business leader, said, we really need to create a program here. We need to start producing students that are ready to come into the financial services world. So that's where business schools now, and business schools, it's certainly the fastest growing, but we still see it kind of working its way throughout the business school community. So that kind of gives you the history, why business schools seem to be they're not the business schools other than Utah Valley University, which has the largest undergraduate program in the country. They're in a business school, but when you look at Texas Tech or Kansas State, Missouri, Georgia, the really big programs, Virginia Tech, those programs are all we're all in the consumer science or family sciences or human sciences area. Now, Virginia Tech's program has migrated to their business school. They were actually dual teaching across the two schools, and now it's fully settled in the business school. So that's why you see that. That being said, the biggest difference, it's the same curriculum. The biggest difference I see between human science and College of Business, having taught in them, is that the College of Business has the core business courses. And so you have a broad business range, but because of that, you lose space in the degree to expand out from the business courses.
Yes.
And you don't have that in the human science schools or the consumer science schools. And while they're teaching the core, they're not getting maybe a course in human resources. They're not getting a course in marketing. They're getting the core of what they need in finance and investing, but it's really targeted to the individual rather than to the kind of the business background. So it's a little bit different take on it. One is not better than the other. I'll say that. Both are great programs. It's just, what are the opportunities maybe while you're in the program? Are there added benefits? Is there enough leeway in the program that you're in to take, I'd love our students to be able to take a psychology course, intro to psychology, or even a social work, a counseling course, something along those lines would be tremendous. We don't necessarily have the space in the curriculum without them extending their degree past the minimum credits required.
Yeah, practically speaking, I can say so I'm a finance major in a CFP program. So I've taken 3 accounting classes and tons of general business type of courses. And I've felt in my job when we're working with business owners, like, oh, I know this better than even some of the advisors, because they didn't have a background in accounting, because I can read financial statements. I understand financial modeling to a high degree. But then I'll work with an advisor who has a background in counseling. And I'm like, well, this person knows how to talk to these humans that are struggling with their emotions around finance. Like, there really is a place for both of these things.
Oh, absolutely.
So I can't say one's more important than the other. But
No, not at all.
What could the trajectory be? And is it always going to be either CFP core, and then if you want to take it to the next level, then you get a little more background in counseling, or you get an MBA? Like, I don't know what the trajectory would be.
Well, and this is where I would say, especially those that are in a financial planning program that are able to sit for the CFP when you're finished. If you're thinking of doing a master's program, consider looking at one of the consumer science or human resource or human sciences based programs, because they offer, while their master's program offers the coursework for financial planning, if you already bring that in, that opens your door for you to be able to focus on those other types of courses. And whether it's financial therapy, which you can look at Kansas State and University of Georgia have incredible programs in financial therapy. Texas Tech has an incredible program in charitable giving. You can get a certificate on how to manage and deal with charitable giving. And so there's that might be a great add-on master's program to take a look at as part of your continuing education.
So, kind of last big question here. Do you mind sharing your Diversitas conference? You hosted this, right?
Yes. Yeah, we created this, and this was our 4th year doing it. Diversitas, the subtitle is Expanding Diversity in Wealth Management, is a program designed to openly address the issue that our industry lacks the diversity that it needs. And there's been a lot of initiatives. Our initiative, we created the first program back in 2017. That grew out of work in 2016, late 2015 and 2016, as I was transitioning from Texas Tech to University of Akron, in conversations with the folks I was joining around, we needed to attract students, but we have a pretty diverse community that we live in. were we attracting enough students with diverse backgrounds to the industry? And the CFP board in 2014 had put out one of their initial diversity documents, the Women's Initiative document, WIN document. And so it had a call to action of reaching out to the community to try to help the community to better understand what the industry was about and where it was going. And so that's where Diversitas came into play. And Diversitas is the Latin root for the word diversity. And so what the purpose of the program is to help three kind of key groups to understand what the industry is doing. It's the professionals in the industry. They know the industry well, but they don't necessarily fully understand some of the transition that's coming, or what some of their firms are doing, or why it's important. And it's not that they don't care, it's that they're just really busy elsewhere and they're trying to understand it kind of on the fly. And so we invite them in to participate to better understand what the industry they're in is trying to do. We invite in, of course, students, because we want students to understand that the industry is trying to change and there's a real need for diversity. And we define diversity very broadly. So while certainly our work started with focusing on gender and we focused on race, ethnicity, we also realized that it incorporates much more than that. So sexual orientation, that there are areas within our industry that focus on LGBTQ and that we need to be inclusive there. We also understand that age is a diversity issue in our industry. When our industry still averages above age 50, I think the numbers come down a little bit, but for years the number was the average age of an advisor was 56 or 57 years old. That might be 52 now. So we're making progress. But when you look at our industry, we have more advisors over the age of 70 than we have under the age of 30. And we need to work with that. So there's the diversity of age also. So that's the idea, was for students to understand that whether it's their gender or whether it's their ethnicity or just the fact that they're young, that's an important issue to deal with in this industry. So they're the second group. The third group, and this is an important part for Diversitas, the third group is that we need to have our career influencers understand better the industry that we're going into. And I brought my own experience to that, even as an older person coming into the industry. When I told my parents, and it was their advisor that I was going to work for, when I told them I was going to join his firm and I was going to be a financial advisor, they're like, oh no, he's going to sell insurance. And so that's what they thought, is they thought it was all a sales job and that's the only opportunities. And so what we've been very intentional about is inviting in the career influencers. And that's your academic advisors at your college, that they better understand what your career opportunities are going to be as they're advising you on the courses or the degrees to seek. It's the high school guidance counselors. It's the high school business teachers, principals who are informal, in some cases, advisors about careers. But we also welcome people. We've had pastors come because they're sometimes asked. We include community groups like the Urban League or the NAACP. We invite them to come in. We invite career outplacement professionals, because they don't understand a lot of times when they're working with a person with a skill set that's very powerful, that skill set may transfer into our industry very well. And so the idea behind Diversitas is, number one, let's openly talk about the fact that we need to change. What are the efforts that are being made to make those changes? Why is it important? And then bring the people together to talk about it. So the career influencers who have never met a financial advisor before can actually sit down across the table and ask questions and hear about the helping profession that it is, the joy of helping clients grow towards their goals, and do those things. For students to meet professionals, and for students to hear that the career influencers are starting to understand that. So that's the idea behind Diversitas. What we did, it's always been a regional program. We've had students come from Michigan State, Olivet in Michigan, Ohio University, Ohio State, Miami University in Ohio. It's been really Ohio, Michigan kind of where we've pulled from. This year, because of the COVID pandemic, we decided to invite our friends around the country with financial planning programs, and had 22 universities join us as partners. So we're expanding it. Diversitas, our goal, our vision is that Diversitas is going to become a national program, annual program where we talk about diversity, but it's also going to be an ongoing program where as students, you will have resources. If you want to learn more about what different firms are doing, we'll have the ability for our sponsor firms to have information available about their efforts, their programs, their scholarships. We're seeing a number of diversity scholarships come on board, and it'll be a place for us to share programming. I've got some good friends at William Patterson University who are doing research in diversity among students in the industry, and so we'd like to help them disseminate their research to the industry so the industry can better serve the students that are in these programs.
So how do you think change happens over time in the industry? Like, how do you think this manifests? Like 20 years in, does it change from enough younger people who maybe identify with one of these, non-white male groups, frankly? Like, does it just take time for these people to find the interest and get invested?
Yeah, I think it's a combination. I think it's an intentional effort for both the industry and the professionals in the industry to be more inclusive, to be, to not only add diversity, but be very inclusive about bringing diverse folks into the industry and to the table. I think they understand. I think the industry truly understands that we'll better serve our clients if we are aligned with our clients. If we look like our clients, we're going to bring in people that haven't been served before because they're more comfortable with the people in the industry that they're dealing with. So I think that's part. I think it's a combination. I think attrition-wise, if we just let it happen, it'll take 100 years. Yeah. So I think it's the intentional piece, and then I think as we see movement, we'll see that movement escalate. We'll see an exponential, and that's my hope, at least. Again, I'm an optimist. My hope is that the work we're doing now, yes, it's going to take 5 or 10 years, but I would really hope 5 to 10 years from now, we see a difference. I don't think we'll be done in 5 to 10 years, though, also. I think it will be a generational. As your generation is coming in, your generation 30 years from now is going to be leading this industry.
So I'll say, personally, I'm an LGBT student, so that's my identity. And entering the field, it hasn't been exactly prepared to handle somebody like me yet. And that was intimidating going in. But I attended your conference, and it kind of was that outside source to be like, it's okay to bulldoze in a sense and like carve my own path in my own world. So I want to just thank you for hosting that conference.
You're welcome.
It really changed my life, because even though it's not immediate in my circle, it gave me permission to you can be an advisor who identifies differently. So I just want to say thank you for that.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. And again, that opens the door for whatever firm you go to, to start to think about an area that they didn't think about. And I don't know that it's intentional they didn't think about it. It just wasn't on their radar. And now it is. And that's you're talking about a very underserved community.
Yeah.
And so, we need to be inclusive.
Well, the funny thing is when I made that distinction, the funny thing was nobody really cared that much. Like, nobody was like, oh, I didn't know. Nobody was like upset with me that I maybe had built up in my head. And it turns out to be kind of a competitive advantage, because I can relate with some people that they couldn't relate to, relate with before. So, I'd recommend anybody else who's kind of in a similar position as me to don't be afraid to stand your ground and, embrace your identity, even if nobody around you has that same identity. So.
Correct. Yeah. And again, I think being brave is important, and also understand you're not alone.
Yeah.
And that's certainly one of the things we're hoping as we're expanding Diversitas to the national level that we're looking at doing, is that we offer that that understanding. And I don't know if we'll create affinity groups, or we'll certainly encourage. There are affinity groups in the industry. We'll certainly encourage those, so that people know, even though you may be the only person in your firm that identifies that way, you don't have to be alone, that there is others out there. And that makes it even easier for you to, as you said, bulldoze, to be that person who pushes it forward.
Yeah. So in closing, any general advice you'd like to give to students listening? Anything that you learned specifically?
We don't have enough time. No. What I would say is, don't be bold. Don't be afraid to step forward and say, I want to learn something. Don't be afraid, as my friend likes to remind me on a regular basis, have you failed enough to earn the right to succeed? Go fail, go try things. I guess maybe that was part of my personality, is I've changed careers several times, and people are like, why? This is great. I've learned something. I've always carried with me. My trunk is getting full that I'm dragging behind me of experience. But guess what? I can pull from that. So be bold. Go try things. If it's not working for you, don't beat yourself up. Realize that maybe you just didn't choose the right on-ramp. And the good news is there's other on-ramps. You don't have to leave the industry to find a different place to fit in. Number one, I want to encourage that, because you're spending a lot of human capital and financial capital to get the degree, to get the skill set that you have. There are many places you can use those skills. And so I've always been an advocate. I've had students say, I don't want to be a financial planner. Hey, great, you learn that. That's a great lesson, but you learn some incredible skills that you're going to take to your next opportunity that are going to be really helpful. And you're going to help people in ways you didn't realize. And yeah, you may not be doing financial planning, but I bet you get asked by fellow workers when they are looking at their benefits and you understand it and they don't, you're going to all of a sudden be giving, pro bono advice to your fellow workers, even though you're not in this industry. So, take what these opportunities are and just grow with them.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on today.
You're welcome. Thanks.
If you liked what you just heard, please like, comment, and share. This is Vincent Pacillo, producer of the MSUwma podcast. MSUwma, or Michigan State University Wealth Management Association, is a student organization part of the Eli Broad College of Business, located in East Lansing, Michigan. Our mission is to inspire and educate the next generation of financial planners. Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you enjoyed it, please check out our channel on all platforms such as Spotify and Apple Podcast. And check out our social media at MSUwma and msuwma.com.